Welcome to part 2 of the birds and other wildlife of northern Peru. The first species presented is a male example of the rufous-crested coquette. This is a hummingbird species native to the tropical slopes of Pacific South America. Because of its small size and low population density, it is a rare sight even within its native range. Note that the male is readily identified by its striking rufous-colored spiked crest. The female, an example of which is seen here, is recognized by its small size and rufous-colored forehead. And here we see a male rufous-crested coquette in the common activity of most hummingbirds, that is, gathering nectar for their high-energy metabolic needs. That male we just saw was seen in real time. Like most other animals, we as human beings experience time a bit slower than do hummingbirds. So let's slow down this video footage of the rufous-crested coquette male by about 10 times so we can better observe just how it interacts with its environment. Considering hummingbirds generally for a moment, we can note that they are bundles of highly strung nervous energy that fly in an unmistakable manner. In order to cope with their frenetic lifestyle, hummingbirds have evolved many unique anatomical and physiological adaptations, including possession of a higher metabolic rate than that of any other living vertebrate. They are truly in a league of their own in the animal kingdom. It is these attributes that enable them to thrive in so many different habitats, from sea level to the high Andes and from Alaska to the southern tip of South America. Do note that hummingbirds are exclusively New World birds and therefore occur only in the Americas. Returning now to considering the rufous-crested coquette in particular, we can note that it has a body length of about 2.3 to 2.6 inches, or about 6.4 to 7 centimeters. These hummingbirds forage primarily in sparsely forested regions, which present low-flowering plant species. They feed on nectar of flowering plants present in humid evergreen forest ecosystems, favoring clearings, forest openings, and roadsides. Specifically, they've been observed foraging around the small white flowers of trees and shrubs in the Inga genus, as well as flowers of Myctaceae and the Verbiaceae plants. While up to this point in time no mating or egg-laying has yet been observed in this species, it does represent a similar courtship ritual to other coquette species. This ritual involves a male performing a series of lateral oscillating flights in front of a perched female, displaying its crest while doing so. The rufous-crested coquette inhabits the Pacific and Caribbean mountainsides of Peru, Bolivia, Colombia, Ecuador, Panama, and Costa Rica, and at least one observation of this species has been reported in western Brazil. The species is primarily found in altitudes of 500 meters to 1,900 meters above sea level. That's about 1,600 feet to almost 5,000 feet. Note the duller, less well-developed plumage on this juvenile male rufous-crested coquette. The rufous-sided crake is a small, slender rail whose range encompasses most of the South American continent. Easily confused with other species in its genus, the rufous-sided crake is only distinguishable by subtle plumage markings and vocalizations. A relatively uncommon and inconspicuous inhabitant of marshes, wet meadows, and grasslands, the rufous-sided crake eats insects, other invertebrates, and occasionally seeds. No migratory movements of the rufous-sided crake have been recorded, but due to its secretive nature, not much is known about its overall life history. Notably, the rufous-sided crake is found in every South American mainland country except Chile. Only fragmentary information is known about the rufous-sided crake's breeding biology. Its nesting seasons are not known for the most part in its range, but include September and October in Argentina. Its nest is a globe of leaves, lined with leaf shreds, dry grass, and feathers. It is placed on or just above the ground and has a side entrance. The incubation period is about 20 days. The IUCN has assessed the rufous-sided crake as being of least concern. The purple-throated euphonia is found in a variety of habitats across its broad range, which stretches from eastern Colombia south to eastern Brazil and northern Argentina. This euphonia usually occurs in gallery forest and at the edge of humid lowland forest, but in Amazonia it is found only in river edge habitats. The purple-throated euphonia is 9 to 10 centimeters or 3.5 to 3.9 inches long and weighs about 8 to 14 grams or about 0.28 to 0.49 ounces. Presently taxonomically divided into some 5 different subspecies, the purple-throated euphonia has a disjunct distribution, yet its ranges cover most of South America. Purple-throated euphonia's breeding season or seasons have not been defined, and thus remain to be determined. The white-necked Jacobin is a uniquely patterned, medium-sized hummingbird. The adult male has a blue head and chest, a sharply contrasting white nape, a green back, and blackish wings. The white-necked Jacobin can be found in a variety of habitats, from humid forest canopies to tall second-growth forests, and even in coffee and cacao plantations. White-necked Jacobins can be found within its broad range, feeding on nectar and small arthropods. Occasionally, many will concentrate at flowering trees where they are aggressive and even territorial to one another. Although uncommon throughout most of its large range, the white-necked Jacobin's population is believed to be stable, and consequently has not been placed on any threatened species list. The golden rufous tail of the golden-tailed sapphire helps identify both sexes since they tend to appear dark. These sapphires are found around humid forest edges, second growth, light woodlands, plantations, gardens, and partially open areas with scattered trees. During the dry season, individuals congregate at large flowering trees and try to defend small floral territories. In less dry periods, birds often forage singly at flowers at various levels. The early rainy season also coincides with when males sing the most. Large and sudden seasonal migrations of these sapphires have been noted in Venezuela. The great-billed hermit is a widespread member of the Phaethornithinae subfamily and can be found in eastern Colombia, Peru, and Ecuador south to Bolivia and east to western Brazil. Populations can also be found in Suriname and French Guiana and in coastal eastern Brazil. This medium-sized hermit is very similar in appearance to the long-tailed hermit, but can be distinguished from this species by its faint gular stripe. The black-throated hermit is a hummingbird found in eastern Andes of Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru. It is similar in appearance to the reddish hermit, but can be distinguished by its prominent dark brown throat and whitish undertail coverts. Lacking the bright gaudy greens of other members of the genus, the overall brown plumage and bright violet auriculars make the brown-violet ear one of the most distinctive hummingbirds. This is a species of a humid evergreen forest, preferring semi-open areas of secondary growth, edges, shrubby patches, and shade coffee plantations. During the breeding season, males are easily detected when they gather in small leks of 3 to 8 birds and persistently sing their sharp, rough songs. They are also frequently seen at hummingbird feeders. The brown violet ear feeds on nectar from small flowers of trees, shrubs, and epiphytes. It also takes insects often caught in flight as an essential source of protein. The fork-tailed wood nymph is a solitary hummingbird that spends most of its time in humid forests, tall second growth, shaded plantations, or in gardens. They usually forage at low flowers, especially from plants in the Rubiaceae genus. While males sometimes defend patches of flowers and act aggressively, females tend to be less territorial and either trapline or steal nectar from the floral territories of other hummingbirds. First described in the late 1970s from northern Peru and only much more recently discovered in southeasternmost Ecuador, the royal sun angel is a strikingly plumaged hummingbird. Males are entirely deep blue with a long, deeply forked tail. Females, in contrast, have dark green upperparts, green-spotted cinnamon underparts with a broad, pale breastband and a shallow forked tail. The species inhabits subtropical elfin forest edge and shrubbery at elevations between 3,300 to 7,000 feet, or 1,450 meters to 2,200 meters. The royal sun angel feeds on nectar and insects. Several flowering plants, shrubs, and small trees have been identified as nectar sources. Males are highly territorial at flowering bushes. Both sexes often feed by perching on a flower rather than hovering, and they have been observed robbing nectar from holes pierced by other birds. They capture insects by hawking from a perch and by gleaning from vegetation. Okay. And here is a little curiosity that we experienced. As best we could tell, this is a chick of a roadside hawk, although it may have been some other bird of prey. This is about as much video of it as we could capture. Okay. The males of the wire-crested thorntail are stunning with their long, wire-like crests and exceedingly long, forked tails. Both sexes display a white rump band. The wire-crested thorntail inhabits humid forests where it is most often seen hovering like a bee, high in the canopy or perching conspicuously along the canopy's edge. The wire-crested thorntail is found in the Andean foothills from eastern Colombia's Meta department through eastern Ecuador into eastern Peru as far south as the department of Puno. It inhabits the edges and interior of humid forests at elevations between 500 and 1,500 meters, or 1,600 and 4,900 feet. This species feeds on nectar, primarily in the forest canopy. It favors the flowers of inga trees. It also eats small arthropods. Almost nothing is known about the wire-crested thorntail's breeding phenology. The one nest discovered was on a branch at about 8 meters, that is 26 feet, above the ground. A medium-sized, greenish hummingbird with a long, slender, straight bill, the blue-fronted lancebill can be found in wet forests, mountain foothills, and adjacent lowlands. It can be found within its range feeding on nectar and small arthropods. There are currently 2 described subspecies of the blue-fronted lancebill. It can be distinguished from the similar and closely related green-fronted lancebill by a smaller, darker violet forehead. its smaller overall size and shorter bill. The spectacularly bizarre Andean cock of the rock is perhaps the most popularly recognized bird of the cloud forest of the Andes Mountains. The national bird of Peru, this species is readily recognized by its fan-shaped crest and brilliant orange plumage, both of which are evident to a lesser degree even in the duller female. Males spend much of their time displaying at leks, where they jump up and down on particular branches and utter low guttural croaks. The common name is derived from the preference for rocks and ledges as substrates for their mud-cup nests. Often difficult to detect away from leks, birds can sometimes be found feeding at fruiting trees. This species occurs from Venezuela to Bolivia in the Andes, and the Andean cock of the rock does not co-occur with the similar Guianan cock of the rock of the Guianan shield. This is a passerine species, about 13 inches long or 32 centimeters long, and weighing around 265 grams or 9.3 ounces. That is about 0.58 pounds. Although males are somewhat larger, the heaviest specimens can reach 300 grams, about 11 ounces or 2/3 of a pound. The Andean cock of the rock's diet consists mainly of fruit and insects, although lizards and frogs have been recorded being taken as well. The nests are built entirely by the female and are mud plastered to cave entrances or rocky outcrops in forest ravines. They are often constructed from the saliva of the female mixed with vegetable matter and mud. The nest is shaped like a concave cup. The female typically lays 2 white eggs. The female incubates these eggs for about 25 to 28 days. The Cinereus tinamou is a type of ground bird found in swamp and lowland forests in northern South America. Relative to other bird species, Cinereus tinamous have been around for a geologically very long time. They are part of the oldest families of the world today and have fossils discovered dating back tens of millions of years. Their quick reflexes play a role in their ability to survive, and perhaps this accounts for them having lived so long on this planet. All tinamous are from the family Tinamnidae, and in the larger scheme are also all ratites, which includes ostriches and emus. Unlike other ratites, tinamous can fly, although in general they are not strong flyers. All ratites evolved from the prehistoric flying birds, and tinamous are the closest living relative of these birds. The little tinamou is a small cryptic tinamou of Central America and of northwestern South America, the Amazon and the Orinoco basins, and southeastern Brazil's Atlantic rainforest. This species patrols the ground near edges of well-shaded primary rainforest and dense secondary forest, slowly walking as it forages for fruit and seeds. The distinctive tremolo of the little tinamou is heard much more often than the bird is seen, and while it vocalizes more during dawn and dusk, can be heard midday with more regularity than the widely sympatric and more crepuscular great tinamou. The rufous-breasted wood quail is found in lowland and foothill forests on the east side of the Andes in Ecuador and Peru to northern Bolivia. The species is principally recorded between 800 and 2,000 meters, or about 3,000 to 7,000 feet. But it locally ranges higher than this in Peru. Despite its wide range, the rufous-breasted wood quail appears to be rare and somewhat local in many areas, and has undoubtedly declined due to deforestation and hunting pressure. As is the case with all wood quail species, given good views, this is a stunningly beautiful and intricately plumaged bird. 3 subspecies are recognized, of which the 2 southerly taxa have the entire lower body rufous. whereas the more northerly ranging subspecies has the rufous restricted to the breast, with the remainder of the underparts gray. Both subspecies and sexes possess an obvious pale superciliary stripe. The gray-fronted dove is widespread and common in humid forests in lowlands and foothills of South America east of the Andes. It has been relatively well studied. It is found on the South American mainland as well as Trinidad and on some islands off the coast of Santa Catalina and Sao Paulo in Brazil. The population size of the gray-fronted dove appears to be large but declining. The species is hunted for food and medicinal use in some parts of its range, but studies suggest that habitat modification and moisture stress from climate change are most impactful. The black-banded woodcreeper is a large, heavy-billed woodcreeper with disjunct populations ranging from southern Mexico to northern Argentina. This species occupies forested habitats from lowland tropical rainforest to montane forests up to 3,000 meters or about 10,000 feet in elevation. In Amazonia, the black-banded woodcreeper often attends army ant swarms to capture fleeing insects, but elsewhere it frequently forages alone. The three recognized subspecies groups, spot-throated, black-banded, and pale-billed, exhibit significant variation with regards to belly barring and other plumage patterns. In northern Peru, the subspecies of black-banded woodcreeper one will encounter is Dendrocolaptes picumnus picumnus, also known as Dendrocolaptes picumnus validus. The black-banded woodcreeper's diet is mostly arthropods, including insects, spiders, scorpions, and centipedes, and also includes small vertebrates, such as lizards and sometimes frogs. It nests in a tree cavity, either natural or excavated by a woodpecker. The clutch size is 2 eggs. The incubation period and time to fledging are not known. Some 11 subspecies of the streaked xenops are generally recognized over the species' very wide range, although geographic variation is frequently described as being slight. The streaked xenops is about 4.7 to 5.1 inches or 12 to 13 centimeters long. Its diet consists of arthropods. The streaked xenop's breeding season has not been determined in most of its range. In Costa Rica, it spans from January to May, and in Trinidad from February to May. It nests in a cavity, whether natural, excavated by a small woodpecker, or excavated itself, and adds a small amount of soft plant fiber to the bottom. Nests have been noted between 1.5 to 9 meters, that is 5 to 30 feet, above the ground. The clutch size is 2 or 3 eggs. The incubation period, time to fledging, and details of parental care are not known. The buff-throated saltator has a stout finch-like bill and traditionally was classified with the cardinals and grosbeaks in the family Cardinalidae. Recent research reveals that saltators are embedded within the tanager radiation, that is, the family Thropidae. Saltators are generally arboreal birds with subdued color patterns and coloration, but usually have a bold superciliary. The buff-throated saltator is one of the more widespread members of the genus and occurs from southern Mexico south to northern Bolivia and southeastern Brazil. The tropical screech owl lives in parts of Central America, including Costa Rica and Panama, and throughout South America. Within their relatively wide range, they can be found roosting, nesting, and hunting in a number of different habitat types. Though there haven't been a lot of studies conducted on this owl's diet, it is known that they feed upon a number of vertebrate species, including reptiles and amphibians, such as snakes and frogs, mammals, including bats and rodents, and even other birds. Of course, we can't forget all of the tasty invertebrates out there for an owl to eat, which includes worms, spiders, scorpions, grasshoppers, roaches, termites, crickets, and beetles. These are just some of the invertebrates on the owl's menu. Like many other owl species, the tropical screech owl doesn't build its own nest. Instead, it lays its eggs inside a natural or man-made cavity, such as a hole in a tree, perhaps carved out by a woodpecker or a nest box. It will sometimes even take over old bird nests and use those in which to raise its young. When the time is right, the female will usually lay between 1 and 3 eggs, though researchers have discovered nests with up to 6 eggs. When the owlets hatch, they are covered in white down, and they have light pink legs and feet. Nestlings come out of the egg helpless. Their eyes remain closed for around the first week of life. Though no definitive information exists, it is likely that these owlets will be strong and develop enough to fly from their nest for the first time when they are about 1 month old. The band-bellied owl is a relatively large owl of humid montane forests ranging along the eastern slope of the Andes from Colombia to Bolivia, in the foothills of the upper subtropical zone, where it replaces the spectacled owl above 400 to 700 meters, or about 1,500 to 2,500 feet. The species is scarce and local in Ecuador, Colombia, and Bolivia, but it is the most common large owl in the Andean foothills of central Peru. Its status is poorly known elsewhere. Band-bellied owl, like most owl species, is nocturnal. Its diet is poorly studied, but is known to include large insects. Though there is no published information on the band-bellied owl's breeding phonology, it is presumed to nest in natural tree cavities. The rusty-tinged Antpitta replaces the white-bellied Antpitta south of the Rio Marañón in northern Peru. This is a range-restricted species, endemic to Peru, where its range spans the eastern Andes in just 3 departments. It is replaced farther south by the bay Antpitta. The rusty-tinged Antpitta forms a superspecies along with these last 2 named species and with the yellow-breasted Antpitta of Colombia and northwestern Ecuador. The rusty-tinged Antpitta inhabits humid montane forest at about 5,500 to 10,000 feet, or 1,700 to 2,750 meters. Recently, the rusty-tinged Antpitta has come to be considered as globally threatened. Indeed, it is restricted to a single endemic bird area and faces severe habitat alteration in the near future. It is thus currently listed as vulnerable to extinction. The scarlet-rumped cacique is a black cacique with a pale whitish bill, striking blue eyes, and a red rump patch. Within what is considered herein to be a single species, there is a clear division between populations in the Andes and those in Central America and the Pacific lowlands of South America. There is strong evidence that highland populations may represent a full species. The Peruvian racketail is found from Ecuador to Peru, and it is one of the smallest Andean hummingbirds. Males have a short blackish bill, metallic green body, black wings, and an elaborate tail with the outermost 2 retroces extending with bare rachis tipped with blunt rackets. Females are white below with green speckles and have a white-tipped tail lacking racketed elaboration. Both sexes show tawny leg puffs, but these are smaller in the female. This diminutive hummingbird favors humid woodland edges in mid-elevations in the Andes. Male Peruvian racketails are 4.3 to 5.9 inches or 11 to 15 centimeters long, including the 2.8 to 3.1 inch or 7 to 8 centimeter long outer tail feathers. Females are 3.0 to 3.5 inches, that is 7.6 to 9 centimeters, long. The Peruvian racketail is found in eastern Ecuador and northeastern Peru. It has been noted to make seasonal elevational movements after breeding. The Peruvian racketail typically forages between 6 and 18 meters, 20 to 60 feet above the ground. It takes nectar from a variety of plants, such as those of the general Pelicorea, Clusia, Inga, and Cavendishia. Often several birds will feed close together. In addition to feeding on nectar, it captures small insects by hawking from a perch. The Peruvian racketail's breeding season has not been studied, but might include most of the year. It makes a tiny cup nest of plant fiber and lichen, typically on a horizontal twig 6 to 8 meters, 20 to 30 feet above the ground. The female incubates the clutch of 2 eggs for 16 to 17 days. Fledging occurs 19 to 22 days after hatching. Rufous-vented whitetips inhabit the understory of humid montane forests, especially in semi-open areas. They forage at low or mid levels of the forest on nectar and insects and sometimes migrate to higher elevations after the breeding season. These medium-sized hummingbirds are green above and have a white spot behind the eye. Males have a large white spot on their forked tails, formed by the white lower halves of the central tail feather. Speckled hummingbirds inhabit humid and wet forests and are most often seen foraging by themselves in shaded shrubs along roads or in thickets in the forest understory. They feed at scattered flowers, where they usually collect nectar from short-tubed flowers or rob nectar from holes at the base of long-tubed flowers. Their nests hang underneath the leaf of a fern. The collared Inca is a large hummingbird and an extremely quick flyer that generally stays below the canopy of moss-laden cloud forests. Both males and females have white outer tail feathers and large white chest patches, both in strong contrast to the otherwise dark plumage. This species prefers long, pendulous tubular flowers, hovering underneath to feed. Unlike the majority of hummingbirds, the collared Inca appears especially prone to join mixed-species foraging flocks of passerines, at least for short periods of time. Several studies have investigated its reproductive biology, but there is much to learn about this large, flashy Andean hummingbird. The long-whiskered owlet stunned scientists when it was discovered by a team from Louisiana State University in 1976. This bizarre, tiny owl is unlike any other known species, with extremely long facial whiskers, stubby wings, and a short tail. Until recently, this species was known only from specimens obtained from mist nets, and there is very little information about its behavior and ecology. It may be nearly flightless and is very difficult to locate in the dense cloud forest habitat. It is known only from a few sites in the area of the Abra Patricia in northern Peru, and habitat degradation threatens its survival. It is probably most likely to be detected at night by its repeated descending heat. The long-whiskered owlet's diet and feeding behavior have not been described. However, one specimen's stomach contained insect remains. Nothing is definitively known about the long-whiskered owlet's breeding biology. Specimens collected between late July and October showed no physiological signs of active breeding, so it's hypothesized that this species breeds between November and June. In 1988, the IUCN originally assessed the long-whiskered owlet as being near threatened, then in 2000 as endangered, and since 2020 as vulnerable. It is known from fewer than 15 sites within a restricted range and has an estimated population of between 250 and 1,000 mature individuals. Edges of humid forests, pastures, and cultivated areas with trees are all home to these small hummingbirds, the white-bellied woodstar. White-bellied woodstars fly slowly like bumblebees and can consequently sneak nectar from the territories of other hummingbirds. They search for flowers at all levels and frequently perch high out in the open. Although they tend to forage by themselves, these woodstars sometimes join other hummingbirds in flowering trees. Both sexes have large white flank patches and a light stripe behind the eye. Males have a wide white chest band, while females are buffy on their upper underparts. The chestnut-breasted coronet is the single representative of the genus Boisanoa on the east slope of the Andes, where it occurs from southeastern Colombia south to southern Peru. It is also found on the west slope of the Andes in the southwestern Ecuador and northwestern Peru. Like other species of coronet, this is a stout, heavy-bodied hummingbird with a relatively short bill, or the bill is short compared to the bills of similarly sized Andean hummingbirds, such as the Incas and star frontlets. The chestnut-breasted coronet forages in the subcanopy and canopy of humid montane forest. It is easily recognized by the conspicuous rufous underparts and tail, and by its characteristic habit of holding the wings upright over the back for a second or two after alighting on a new perch. Sylphs are a captivating group of short-billed, long-tailed hummingbirds that inhabit humid montane Andean forests. The long-tailed sylph is the most widespread member of the genus, ranging from Venezuela to Bolivia. It is the sole Agliocercus species to occur on the east slope of the Andes, but its range also encompasses the western slopes in Colombia and Ecuador. There its distribution overlaps with the formerly conspecific violet-tailed sylph, which typically occurs at lower elevations. The long-tailed sylph is a sexually dimorphic species. Males have a glittering green crown and throat, and exceptionally long and dazzling blue-green rectrices. Females have a much shorter tail, a white throat with green speckles, and a tawny buff belly. This species forages at all heights in the forest and at the forest edge. Its nest is a suspended ball or clump of moss with a side entrance and a tail of moss dangling below. The IUCN has categorized the long-tailed sylph as being of least concern, largely due to its broad distribution and correspondingly large population size. But there are some indications that it could be in decline, and further information is needed to understand this species' status and threats on a finer scale. The barrel-spangled tanager is found at high elevations in Venezuela, Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, and Bolivia. Much of the head and underparts are black, heavily spotted, the spots appearing bluish or greenish. This feature gives them their brilliantly colored spangled appearance. Like other members of the genus Tangara, they are omnivores, feeding on both fruit and arthropods.
It flew.
Muy bonita. The chestnut antpitta was discovered in the 1980s and was described from just a few specimens. It is endemic to the eastern slopes of the Andes in northern Peru. Since its discovery, we have learned very little about its general behavior and ecology, although it has been found at several additional localities and more recordings have been made of its voice. The chestnut antpitta is believed to be a year-round resident throughout its range. Its diet and foraging behavior have not been detailed. However, it is assumed to eat arthropods and perhaps small vertebrates, as do other members of the genus Grallaria. It is known to forage on or very near the ground. Nothing is known about the chestnut Antpittas' breeding biology. The chestnut Antpittas song is a rapid, monotone, slightly accelerating series of chiming notes,